and welcome to day 5, Friday, of Income Protection Action Week. Thank you for joining us today. It may be the last day of IPAW 2024, but we're not letting up.
Today's session is focused on retention, value, and making sure that clients are aware of everything their income protection policy offers them. We'll be welcoming our advisor panel to the studio for a conversation about how to have regular reviews with clients, why this is an important part of the advisor role. We'll also be considering the value-added services as part of the income protection proposition and look at what services are available, the take-up of the different options and the role we have to play in making clients aware of what is actually available to them.
But before we start our discussions today, it just wouldn't be IPAW if we didn't ask you to get involved. As usual, we're asking you to share your thoughts online using our hashtag IPAW2024. Now, we'd really like to hear about your IPAW highlights today. What has stood out for you this week? And most importantly, we want to know what you will now do because of IPAW. That could be something new you're going to try, a tweak you're going to make to your existing way of working, or something else entirely. Whatever it is, it won't just make us feel better about our work here, but it may just inspire others as well.
Now, today is all about delivering value to clients, both through regularly reviewing cover to ensure it is appropriate, but also by highlighting that IP policies can offer so much more than just financial protection. Later on, we'll be sharing our 7 Families film on value-added services. But let's start today hearing how one of our 7 advisors, Charlotte Rogers, reflected on how one of the 7 families was able to make full use of the extra benefits available to him to help aid his recovery.
With Daniel's story, what I found particularly interesting was the fact that he tapped into so many additional services that an income protection policy can provide. He spoke very little about the financial benefit that the policy would offer, but more around the support services that were available to him. He did use some of the income provided to him to support his recovery through oxygen treatment and walking aids. But what was most important to Daniel was the occupational support available through his case manager, which allowed him to start exploring different options back into the world of work. And I think that's really important for any claimant to remember, is that actually income protection is there to support you financially, but you can't, or very few people will be able to sustain a good quality of living on simply their income protection payout, because it is less than the income that they're used to generating. But all of the support services and tools are there to encourage you back into a world of financial stability through earning your own income again. Whether that's in your same occupation that you left, or it's a different occupation that you can retrain in. By keeping him motivated and keeping him engaged and keeping him able to identify his skills and opportunities, he was able to be more positive in returning to the world of work. Likewise, with the amount of physiotherapy he received, it got him stronger, not just physically but mentally too. And I think the key takeouts from having an income protection policy is it's not just the financial support, it's all of the additional support services that wrap around that to get you back into the world of work, or if not, to support you on a more day-to-day basis.
Some great points there, and to introduce our discussion with our advisor panel today, I'm delighted to welcome to the studio Nicola Huxley from Sphere Financial, Zoe Priselac from Waymore, and Jiten Varsani from 41. Hi guys, thanks for joining us today.
Hello.
Hi there, Jo.
So let's start with client reviews, and how often do you review your clients' cover, and perhaps you can talk us through the process and how you do it really, Nicola?
For us, it's quite a new thing, but we do annual reviews now. So we've kind of gone into a shift and change of mindset from, I guess, what used to be industry opinions on churning, so reviewing to get more business, back to reviewing as part of like consumer duty and making sure we're looking after our customers for the long term. So once we got that shift in mind, we kind of made sure we're reviewing everyone every single year. I think it will be different ongoing because we're prepping the clients that they're going to be reviewed every single year. But the older clients, it's like a brand new thing for them. And I think they are wondering why we're getting in touch quite so often.
Yeah.
But we tend to do like an approach of, a WhatsApp, a quick call, an email, try and keep it quite casual.
Yeah.
In terms of how we get in touch with them. And we just kind of make sure it's for the right reasons. So it's so that they know that we're wanting to do the best thing for them. We want to remind them of the cover they've got in place. And we want to make sure if anything's changed that we're keeping the cover up to date. So it's making sure it's really friendly and part of like us looking after our clients and keeping it at the heart of what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. So is it similar for you? Or?
Yeah, definitely. So annual reviews, I will reach out to clients with consumer duty if we need to ensure that we're helping clients avoid foreseeable harm. We can't simply, provide them with the protection and then not speak to them again, or only speak with them when the mortgage interest rate is up. So it's really, really important to do those reviews. So with clients, when I have a new client, I will set them up to expect that they will have a review as part of the service that I offer. It's really, really important. We've put their protection in place, their family is protected. Now what we need to ensure that come what may, that will continue to be the case. If anything's changed, we need to make sure that protection is still adequate for them. So I will say to the client, if any of these particular events happen, then, please contact me, because that's a need to review the cover. But if I don't hear from you, then I will contact you, in 12 months' time. And also, not only from the client's point of view, is it really, really important, but, as an advisor, it's great for retention. You're building that rapport with the client. You can talk to them about the value-added benefits. You may get referrals. You may need to add more cover. So a real, real benefit for the client and also for the advisor as well.
Yeah, and I guess for the client, it keeps front of mind that you're their financial advisor. They may get a letter from an insurer and not remember otherwise. So it's a good tactic. Jiten, to avoid being too repetitive, is it similar for you? Have you got anything to sort of add to?
Yeah,
to
no, I'd say very similar to both of them, really. Just make sure it's still fit for purpose. And I think we use the word review, but maybe change it to a review and a reminder, and just refreshing what you have and why you took it, because a year is a long time. So much can happen and change.
Absolutely. So if we can talk about the sorts of events that make reviews necessary. We may have advisors watching today who this isn't part of their process and they're thinking, well, why do I have to do it? What sort of things do I need to ask my clients? Jiten, perhaps you can start us off on this one. There's the sorts of events that would make a review necessary and why. So
I'll break it down to two bits. The first one is personal circumstances. And as I just said, a year doesn't seem long, but it can be. So much can happen and change. So within that area, we're normally looking for things like change in occupation, salary increases, or sometimes decreases, as may be the case. Personal circumstances, have they had children, marriage, divorce, change of beneficiaries. We've had people fall out with the people they wanted to leave their money to. So that can trigger a good idea to just revisit. Yeah. But also even more than that, I think it's industry enhancements. We all know that products are getting a bit more sophisticated, better features, and revisiting that for the client, I think, is just as important as, well, just because there's been a change in circumstances, there could be better cover. And really important, it's not always about going up. Sometimes you have to find that they're overinsured and adjust the policy to make sure it's fit for purpose for there as well.
Absolutely. Zoe, what would you say? What events would trigger a review? If you're an advisor watching at home and this is not something you do, what should you be asking your clients has changed?
So have they changed jobs? Have they bought a house? Have they got married, divorced? Have they had children? Have they had an increase in their income? If they've moved, employers, has that affected their benefits? Do they no longer have sick pay, or has that changed? There's lots and lots of events that certainly trigger a need for a review.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's the same for you.
Yeah, it's similar. We actually found that it was much better to not ask people what had changed.
Right, okay, that's interesting.
12 months goes really, really quickly. Mm-hmm. And we just say to people all the time now, wow, time flies, I can't believe I'm talking to you again. What's happened in this last 12 months?
Right.
And then we found they were sharing everything. They share the job changes, they share the gym memberships that mean that we know that they might have lost some weight since last time when we had a load-in that was, we can change things up and move things around. And just found that was an open question to help them share.
Yeah, and so that's a really good tip then, to use an open question and just let them talk, and then you as the advisor can spot what you're looking out for that might be relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah, top tip. So what sort of response do you get from clients then when you're getting back in touch? I mean, it's quite the process to get them on board in the first place, get them signed up, get the cover in place. I guess depending on how you do it, they may not necessarily automatically see the need for another conversation. So have you got any tips or advice that you could share and experiences of how people have reacted to that process?
Yeah, I think for me, that's this preempting, so telling them that it is something we're going to do, I think will help ongoing. And we're kind of only just getting to that point. I think other than that, people are a bit sceptical. They do think you're going to try and sell them something extra. And I think it's just about being quite gentle with how you approach it and just make sure they know that it's coming from the heart and it's that you want to do something that might be helpful to them. So for us, we just do, it's very, very casual. But I would say that probably only 20% of people do talk to you.
Right.
The rest of them, it might be like, I'm fine, thank you. You know, just that normal reaction. And if anyone's got any other tips, that's brilliant.
Zoe, how about you?
I mean, again, because we do set the client up for that annual review, we do have a good response rate. I mean, again, when, we approach them to book them in for the review, we explain it's important to check that the cover still meets your needs. We spoke about the value-added benefits with the plan. Have you used those? Let's ensure that you are using those, those things as well. So, that is effectively how we would approach it, really.
Fantastic. And Jiten, what sort of response do you get from clients?
Really good. I think, again, as an industry, we sometimes focus so much on chasing the new client that you sometimes forget to look after the existing. And here's a group of clients who have already taken your advice. They already have the products that you wish to review and talk about. And I think, as Nicola said, how do you position it with them? If it feels like, well, okay, it's been a year, I want to see what else I can sell you, that's obviously not going to go down very well. But if you position it in the right manner that, hey, this, I understand, has changed. Now, mine's a bit different. I'm quite boutique with our clients. So we have WhatsApp groups with them all. Many of them follow me on social media. We follow them back. So you actually see that they've had a kid or something's changed in their world. And that sometimes might be a good excuse for me to go and approach them and say, look, congratulations. By the way, this might have an impact. When you get a moment, let's catch up. But you're not going to get everyone. Some people do feel that a year just isn't long enough. Life is busy, let's face that. And so then we would always work on their agenda. And you can't be too forceful, but just postpone it maybe another 6 months, another year, and always make sure you keep revisiting on a regular basis.
I mean, it's really, really important just to remind them what they've got, even if nothing has changed, because people forget, what that direct debit is that's coming out. So, let's just have a talk through, remind you what you have in place.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think even if you have a very thorough conversation at the point that they're going on cover, it's almost a relief when they get on cover, right? And that relief means we kind of put it in another part of the brain and get on with life, don't we?
We just said before, we're obviously talking about value-added services in a bit, but even just ask, have they used any of them? And remind them what they have got to access. In that conversation of what's happened this year, hopefully they might even tell you they have used them. If they haven't, and you see a point where they could have used them, it's highlighting those things that they've got to their fingertips as well.
Yeah, and I guess as well, the better you know your client, there's opportunities there. Obviously, they've got kids that are leaving home, but looking to buy their first home. There's something in it for advisors as well, right? So.
Yeah, and I'd agree. If you position it from the original meeting, I'm actually now, never had this before, but we're getting clients in the last, say, year or so. They're contacting me to say, we're about to have a kid.
Right.
Do we need to tweak anything? Do we need to change anything? And I think that's also just the whole signposting from day dot, not just we sold your policy and then forget about them, but reminding them how important it is to make sure that these policies are going to be fit for purpose and actually fit what you want them to do as your life changes and evolves. And really important, get that right. And you almost find the clients that come back to you.
Yeah, like I said, they get used to it, I think. I've got a client this week, he's just left his job and gone self-employed.
Right.
And as he's done that, they've contacted me to say, this income protection is probably needs changing. How do we do that? And like you said, you switch their mindset as well, don't you, to work collaboratively.
Yeah.
So but that comes from the reviews and that contact being closer.
And understanding what they have, valuing what they have, knowing how important it is, and a big part of that is that initial process, definitely in that initial advice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've just found the perfect client then who's going to come to you without any prompting at all. I'm imagining we're going to be getting questions about where does Nicola find her clients.
Perfect clients,
So, so far we've looked at what you do and how you do it. Let's talk about the why, probably the meaty bit. We've got 5 or so minutes left. So let's think about the consequences of not reviewing cover. If we haven't convinced those watching that they need to be thinking about doing it and given them some ideas of how to do it. So have you come across examples of where you've, a client hasn't reviewed their cover regularly enough? We'll go along the line. Nicola, we'll start with you.
Mine wasn't really that we haven't reviewed. It was just that contact points. So we were trying to get in contact with a client. He was being quite elusive, kind of not hunted him down, but, kept our gentle probing. And he spoke to us and he said, I'm really sorry that it's taken me so long to talk to you, but I've been a bit all over the place. I had a heart attack 2 months ago and I've just been getting back on my feet. So we're like, oh goodness, and then identified that he had his critical illness policy that he needed to make a claim on. We then started his claim, sorted his claim out, and then a few weeks later he had £93,000 in the bank. But actually without that call, he had completely missed the point of his critical illness policy, which is why we remind people constantly anyway. But without it, he would have not done that. And then now he knows the value in what we do, and he's got the value out of the insurance he had set up in place as well. And then his income protection in the background too. Yeah, there was a great example on LinkedIn yesterday, actually. Ellen Knowles saying exactly the same thing. He'd revisited a client and they'd forgotten as well. So Zoe, how about you? Do you have any stories to share?
Yeah, definitely. And particularly when I, do an initial review with a new client and I'm looking at legacy policies and what they've got in place and they haven't had a review, for years and years and years. I've had instances where I had a carpenter and he had income protection, working tasks definition. Mm-hmm. I've had people be hugely underinsured because they've got an old legacy IP and it wasn't, inflation linked. I've also had a policy in trust and only the life assured the settlor is the trustee, the one trustee on the policy. Lots and lots I could go on really.
Yeah. But generally it's always worth the review.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And Jiten?
Similar. I mean, I think the two I'd share with you is one was a scenario where they didn't want a review, just felt everything was absolutely fine. And because my approach to protection is a more lifestyle based, their salary had more than doubled, I think almost tripled actually it was. But now when they actually fell ill, they were being insured for when they first took the policy. So it put a big strain on the lifestyle that had already built up. So it almost meant going backwards, whereas that could have been a great way to bridge that gap. And I think one of the scarier ones was also a review that it almost took place a bit of a more coincidental scenario. But 2 years later, he had a stroke. And what was interesting is under his critical illness policy, the original one he had wouldn't have paid out based on the severity, whereas the new one did. So again, it's really important that we don't just focus on the client changing circumstances, but what's out there, what's better, what the policies are.
Yeah, so the industry developments.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And he was pretty pleased that the replacement did pay, obviously, for his mindset, but could have easily not paid. And I think that's, again, where we really do need to ensure we're checking that the cover is still adequate and if there's better options out there for them.
Yeah. So just, we've got a minute or two. I just want to ask, I guess, is it more important to do reviews from an IP perspective? I mean, you've actually picked up that when you went back to your client, it was critical illness that they could claim on. But what would you say? Is it particularly important for IP?
Yeah, definitely, because people's salaries change all the time. Their work benefits change all the time. The cost of living has changed dramatically over the last few years. So then people might have taken a lesser level of insurance in the past because their bills were that level. Yeah. And they didn't go to the maximum and they weren't doing anything different. Then you've got to make sure you check back in on it. And it's something that you do talk to them. And it just helps you keep your client close. But equally, those things do change. I mean, how many times do you go to a client for the mortgage? You've done a certain amount. You go back to 3-4 years later when you do the next mortgage and the salaries have doubled. Now you don't want to wait that 4 years to double the benefits from their income protection, because their income protection, people live to their means and they need the income that goes with the means that they've changed along the way. And that's why it's so important for income protection, I think. Yeah.
Deferred periods are amazing because, as I said, as soon as you change jobs, you went from having 6 months full pay to now having 1 month full pay, or sometimes vice versa. Make sure you're not overinsured. So having those conversations with clients is really, really important. And then as part of that review, utilising things like guaranteed insurability options. Now, I know people have got their own thoughts on it. They can be great, but sometimes restrictive as to when you can engage those. But again, really important, making sure you're not leaving their client detrimental because of that one change in circumstances.
And also reviewable exclusions as well. Does the client have, back exclusion, a mental health exclusion? Can this now be reviewed? Again, we've spoken about deferred periods. Are they overinsured now, if the policy is index linked? So lots and lots of things can change. Really, really important to do reviews of income protection,
Yeah. So if someone's watching this and thinks, right, I'm going to do it, I'm going to start this in 1 minute, can you give me your sort of, how do they get started? What's the first thing they need to do to sort of start this journey on tackling client reviews?
Systems and processes.
Right.
You've got to put a system in place to make sure you review them. That's the key, really, and then decide how you're going to do it.
Great, very concise answer.
Yeah, 100%. I would say setting up new clients to know that they will be having an annual review and it's part of the process, and benefits them. And again, the systems, you need to have that reminder that comes up, that you need to review that client and then obviously contact them.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly that, but just not pick up the phone. Don't send an email saying it's time to review, because we all get bombarded with emails. Pick up the phone, have a personal conversation, and then take it from there.
That's great. Well, thank you all for your input so far. So next up, let's see what happened when Vicky caught up with a few of our value-added service provider members to talk all things value-added benefits.
Hello and welcome to our discussion today. We're joined by 3 of the industry's value-added services providers to discuss what services are offered, how frequently customers use these services, and their growing importance in the income protection landscape. This is also a subject I'm really passionate about. So, thank you very much for being here. Can I ask you each just to briefly introduce yourself? Steve.
Hi Vicky. I'm Steve Casy. I'm the Marketing Director for Square Health.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christine Husbands and I'm the Commercial Director at Red Arc.
Hi, David Markus, and I'm the European Client Director at Teladoc Health.
Lovely, thank you very much. And can I ask each of you to just very briefly outline the services that your companies offer? Steve, if I can start with you.
Sure. Well, Square Health have been providing connected health and wellbeing services since 2017. In fact, our first client was British Friendly and their income protection portfolio. Now, I use the word connected very, very carefully there, because we believe that it's not a case of just offering a range of healthcare services. It's A, how they interact with each other, B, how they're accessed, and C, much more importantly, how they can hand off to one another. So we provide a range of services like virtual GP consultations, physiotherapy, mental health support, but we also provide the technology to enable the customer to access those services.
Okay, connected, that's a good way of explaining it. Thank you very much, Steve. What about you, Christine? What did Red Arc offer?
So Red Arc's been around for 26 years, and throughout that time we've been very heavily involved in the protection industry, particularly into income protection, where we've been an integral part providing long-term support to people with serious health conditions, whether that be mental health, physical health, and giving them very much holistic support to deal with all the aspects of what's going on for them and their families at such a difficult time.
Okay, thank you. And Dave, what about Teladoc?
Teladoc, well, we've been providing what you'd call added value benefits now for about 30 years. So many of the services that Steve's referred to. It's more of a holistic, tangible, usable services that people can use every day that add real benefit to their lives. And for us, it's all about making sure people are aware of these services. Rather than hidden secrets, it's how do I access them, when, and what's the impact for me and my family. And the impact's often outstanding. It's just getting that message out.
Okay, and that's a really interesting point. So these are really interesting range of services, but what is the actual customer usage? Dave, what's the customer usage?
Customer usage, well, let's start pre-pandemic. So pre-pandemic as a business globally, we were doing what we would call 1 million consults, which we were very, very proud of. And then COVID came and the world changed. It was like the genie came out of the box. In 2022, that 1 million went to 50 million. Wow. So we celebrated as a business 50 million consults. And last year we did 23 million. So services that were maybe seen as niche originally, and the kind of thing you might get via a Bupa or a private plan, suddenly people have realised it's part of everyday protection there to be used.
Okay, thanks. And what about Red Arc, Christine?
Well, we see our impact in 2 ways, really. One, in terms of the longevity of support and the impact that we make and the outcomes that we see from the customers. We very much feel we offer the widest range of services to the widest range of health conditions, to the widest range of people, because we cater for all long-term illnesses. We've been finding over the last, for many years, that our insurer partners proactively refer people to us when people make a relevant claim. But also, many of them also offer the services on a self-refer basis as well. And we're finding that self-refer basis growing massively to a point where it's pretty much on par with the proactive referral. And that means that people are starting to be aware of them, understand the value of the benefit to them. Now, somebody can be supported by one of our nurses for on average 9 months, something a lot longer. And in that time, the average is about 11 or 12 discussions with the nurse. The utilisation we see is always upwards of 85%. And we're very proud of our Net Promoter Score, which is world class of 89%, I think the last one was. And 95% of people that use the services say it enhances their view of the insurer.
Okay, well, that's all positive. And Steve, what about Square Health?
Well, I mean, I echo what David said. I mean, COVID certainly put the go faster stripes on people accessing and getting used to video consultations. From our data, we see a massive spike in consultations on a number of occasions. At the moment, we're seeing an increase in people presenting for physiotherapy with neck, shoulder, elbow or wrist problems. And we sort of attribute that really to the case of people hybrid working, perhaps not having the correct place, working on ironing boards, that type of thing. But that's just one example of what we've seen. But all across the board in all our services, we have seen a general increase. Of our services, remote GP consultations take the top spot and have always done so. But they're being closely followed now before health MOTs, mental health and wellbeing support, and physiotherapy. And on certain of our portfolios, we talk about utilisation rates, etc. 65% of monthly consultations are actually repeat users.
Okay. That's interesting. And you talk about go faster stripes, which is a really interesting way of putting it. So we are where we are, and certainly, Dave, you touched on it as well, post-COVID. What do we think the future holds? Is it growing? Do you think it will grow? Christine, what do you think?
I think undoubtedly, yes, it is growing. I think we do have an NHS which in many ways is excellent, but there are shortcomings that we're all aware of. So there are gaps, there are delays, and people are increasingly having to find ways to self-navigate around all of that. So they're always looking for help to do that. And that's one of the things we do a lot. We've seen utilisation grow over nearly all of our clients over the last 12 months, ranging from about 29-30% utilisation increases right up to 180%. So again, the awareness is growing and people are understanding the benefit that's there for them and helping find their way through whatever path they're going through. And in our case, it tends to be very long-term issues. So people are really needing that help because it's just not there elsewhere.
Steve, given the growing trends, and we've talked about post-COVID, and you talked about go faster stripes, what do you believe the importance of the service is growing? I mean, how is it going to grow in the future?
Without doubt, they are going to continue to grow. As Christine mentioned, the NHS, let's be clear, the NHS is the jewel in the crown for the UK. It might not seem so at the time with 7.6 million people on the waiting lists, but the reality of it is there to support people when they need. With regard to value-add services, Dave mentioned the genie's out of the box. Absolutely, they're there to stay. I don't believe that they would be taken away. And I can just see people understanding more about the services and more importantly, how they can actually access them and the ease of which they can access. And I think once we crack that, then we'll see a continued utilisation going month on month increasing.
Okay, that's good to hear. Dave, would you agree?
Absolutely. And I think there's two huge components here. One, the messaging. It took COVID to get the industry to recognise that these aren't value-added services. These are intrinsic benefits that have life-affecting changes on people, really positive changes. But it's great to say that, but it's trust. As Steve talked about, as Christine talks about, we've now got such huge numbers of repeat users. The trust is there. And when you've got trust, you've got reliability, you've got people actually saying, this is now my first point of call, rather than my local doctor or my local physio. It's these services, 24/7, 365, not part of a claim. You don't have to claim to use them. Just there, having a virtual clinic in your pocket to say, I can reach out and use. So these are going up and up and up, and it's just there for people to understand how to access and when.
And so on that point, building on that point, so we see growth, you all see growth. Some insurers have started to charge for these additional services. Do you think that's something we're going to see more of, Steve?
I think the jury's out on that, to be perfectly honest. I mean, there has been examples in the past where providers have tried to offer additional services and charge for them, and they failed. So probably for a variety of very, very good reasons. So I'm actually going to sit on the fence on that one, if you like, and say the jury's out.
Okay, Christine, are you on the fence?
Yeah, I guess so. I think what concerns me is where insurers do charge for them that some people won't pay for it. And then when they really need it, it's not there at what can be a very vulnerable time. They haven't got access to these things. So it's affecting the outcomes for the customer, but it's also affecting the impact on the insurer because they've got more people not getting help early and potentially becoming more unwell. So I think it's got a bigger impact than just pay or not pay. It's what is the impact on the customer ultimately.
Which is the important thing.
Absolutely.
Dave, in your view?
Yeah, I think maybe there is a place, but I hope that it stays part of the insurance protection purview. It's such a strong component of insurance now. It's whether it's income protection, critical illness, life cover. I think it would be it'd be a real shame if suddenly people had to pay for these services that actually allow advisors now to, with value-added services, win more business, retain more business, have a good story. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've all worked together. We've probably worked in insurance for probably 100 years with our ages. I've been 35 years. How often do we hear that advisors struggle to get the message across or they don't have the time? And you've got a suite of services just in this room that tells interesting stories, that adds value, that protects families, that you might never claim on your protection policy, but you get so much benefit. So I hope they remain integral, absolutely part of the journey with insurance protection.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so the majority of our audience today, so we've got the whole industry logged in and watching, but the majority of the audience are going to be advisors. What would be your ask to them? Dave, if I can start with you.
Okay, so it's not a big ask, but it's an important one. I'm a huge advocate of these services. 3 years ago, it was these services that saved my wife Emily's life when she was told she had polyps and she had colon cancer. 2 weeks after she finished chemo and got the all clear, I'd been told, stop bothering us. Don't need to worry by my own doctors. You're fine. You're in a good place. You've had pneumonia. You've had a chest infection. And I had non-smoker's lung cancer. I was about 3 or 4 weeks away from being inoperable. So my ask is every single advisor, you have a duty of care to tell your customers pre-sale and post-sale, these are the services that you have, because I'm in a really good place. We're both cured. We're both happy. We're married now. Sometimes in a dark moment at night, I wonder if I wasn't in the industry, would I have known I had access to a virtual GP? And the reality is, without that Teladoc virtual GP, I wouldn't be here today. And my income protection critical illness claim actually would have been Emily's life claim. So my message is talk about them, get people to understand them, and remind them.
Thank you, Dave, and congratulations on your marriage. And we're really delighted that you and Emily are both fit and healthy now.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Christine, what would your ask to the advisors watching today be?
Well, I can only echo what David's just said, but I do think that I don't think it's as easy for them as it could be, because I think the messages are still very complex, still very hard to understand the differences between the services, and there's a kind of view to say, well, one must be the better than the other. Actually, I don't agree one's better than the other. I think that some services are ideal for one situation and other services are ideal for another situation. And it's great to see more and more insurers now putting services together. So I sit alongside Square Health on 1 or 2 policies, and that's great because they're looking after sort of what I call the everyday health services, GP services and the like, and we're looking after the long-term support for people with serious health conditions. Both are equally valuable at the time, depending on what's needed. But I don't think we make it very easy as an industry for them to understand and articulate that to customers. I work very closely with all the insurance parties, and I'm sure David and Steve do the same with theirs, to help improve the messaging And I'm also working closely with a CI expert on their new health and wellbeing platform to help the analysis of these services, which can only be a good thing. And I'm just really keen to do what we can to improve what's there for advisors, to make it as easy as possible for them, so that they're then able to have those conversations confidently and easily, with understanding what all the services are there for.
Okay, that's great. It's great to hear what you're doing with CI Expert.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Steve, what would your ask of advisors be?
I've got three, if I may. First, around picking up on what David said, it's around talking pre-sale, during the policy, communications with annual benefit statements with the policyholders to remind them of these services. Invitations to AGMs if you're a mutual, for example, again, re-emphasising you've got these services, they are available from day one, and as Dave said, you don't have to claim. The secondly is make use of services, comparison services such as CI Expert that Christine outlined. They're there, they show what an invaluable part these services really are. And thirdly, sort of like post-sale, please continue to badger your customers in terms of getting them down to download and authenticate, so they have everything ready for when they don't need it. So when they do need it, it's there and then, and they can book the services very quickly.
We talked a lot about value-added services, the importance and what advisors can do. What other uses from an advisor's perspective do value-added services have? Dave?
I think the really obvious one, but so many people don't think about it, is it's a great way of getting referrals. And if you think, if my advisor who's done a great job for me, and at the end they do that traditional time-honoured question of, Dave, who else would benefit from my valuable advice? Being really honest, when it comes to finances, I'm pretty confident I wouldn't want to give my friends and neighbours and colleagues details to somebody, because it feels a bit, British are a bit weird like this. Oh, I don't want them investing in their finances. But if my advisor says to me, Dave, who among your friends and family and colleagues would benefit from their family having access to a GP or a physio or mental health or a second medical opinion, it's an obvious question to answer. I'll write the list, because it's less about money and it's about me actually helping my friends and family. So if an advisor can get that into their armory, into their toolkit, and pose that question, it's going to reap more rewards and ultimately sell more insurance, protect more people. And these services that we've all talked about today that make such a huge impact on people are there to be used by everybody.
Mm-hmm. It's a really, really good point. Okay. Would you like to add anything, Steve?
I would just say I'd echo 100%. What a great referral mechanism that is. And I think some more work needs on that to really sort of promote and push that.
I think interestingly as well, it would be useful for advisors to make sure they are using it themselves, and we've all used it ourselves, so we all believe in it. So, it's important for advisors to practice what they preach, if you like, and have their own policies and use the services. So, well, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been fantastic for you to share your insights. It's clear that value-added services are not just a marketing gimmick, but are becoming an essential component of the income protection proposition. We're really pleased to include this important subject in IPAW for 2024, which is new, and it's been really useful. I hope the advisors have found it useful too. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, a really interesting discussion there, and I'm delighted and relieved that Nicola, Zoe and Jiten have stuck around to turn some of that theory into reality from an advisor's perspective. So maybe Zoe, if I can come to you first. So with value-add services, how do you introduce those to a client that you're talking with?
So at the end of the advice process, I will talk them through the value-added services with the policy, and I'll help them get set up. So that may be ensuring that they're set up on the client portal, how they would do that. With some of them, with other providers, it may be a case of downloading the app. If they know how to use them and access them, it's much more likely that they'll use them. And during that advice process, I listen to what they say. They may complain about, not being able to, get in with a GP, or be worried about being able to see a consultant. Have investigations, and then on the back of that, I know a provider that will have a video GP service, maybe adding some life cover with L&G with the private diagnostics, would be a great outcome, for that client. And just to give you an idea of, the importance and what these value-added benefits can do, some stats, that I've read. So, cover, in a survey that they did, only 16% of consumers, knew about the value-added benefits. But yet Exeter, who have been, ensuring that their customers know about these value-added benefits, they're seeing a 97% year-on-year increase in them taking them up. And some stats from Protection Guru, claims on a video GP service, 90% are within 3 hours. Mental health services, 95% within 2 days. Second medical opinion service, 95% within 10 days. And when you think of the waiting times, the huge backlog that we have with mental health services, these can really, really, really help clients in a time of need. And one surprising stat for me was the second, I love stats, you can probably tell, stats, quizzes and stats. But with the second medical opinion service, 1 in 3 were given a change in treatment and 1 in 5 a change in diagnosis. I think they're fantastic. They can be really, really useful, and then great for client retention. If they're using these things, they really see, further value, as well as the protection, which is the most important, but they see the further value in the policy that they have.
Yeah, thank you for that. Jiten, I'm interested in your view. So I know value-add services is a thing that different advisors kind of use very differently. So how do you use them in your process?
I like added value services. Let me get that out there first. I think they play a great role. No one takes insurance with the view that, great, I want to go out there and make a claim one day. And I think value added services can really help you get to that stage where earlier diagnostics, physiotherapy, all those sort of bits to hopefully get you to a stage where you don't need to make the claim. But I do believe sometimes there's the danger that we forget that value-added benefits, they're not part of the core proposition. So income protection is the core proposition, life, critical illness is the core proposition. Every provider always, if you look at all the terms and the conditions, so where Zoe likes stats, I like to read the small print, it literally says, this is not a contractual benefit and can be removed at any time. So we just need to make sure that as an industry and as advisors, we don't fall into the trap that you're recommending a policy or a product provider for the reason that they've got really good added value services. On the top of that, when they do have them, yes, we need to engage. We need to make sure the clients are aware that these things are there. Because again, the amount of paperwork you get, people ignore it. We said earlier that emails aren't always the things that are read, and just reminding them that these are there, use them, but don't be too overly reliant as to that's the reason I'm recommending a particular provider or product.
Yeah. So Nicola, that gives you not the casting vote. I'm quite up for a scrap.
Simon Cowell. Yeah, let's not do that. Let's not do that.
But, how do you introduce talk about?
They're obviously amazing, and I think particularly for income protection, that's something you can use to overcome an objection before it's there. So I, in particular, use it to kind of, one of the objections is they don't pay a claim. So I say the insurers don't want to pay a claim, but they're hiding in plain sight. If you are claiming because you've got a bad knee and you're off work and you need your income protection, then they are going to pay for benefits that help you get back to work sooner because they don't want to pay you. But it's a win for you because you get there sooner. And then as a result of that, I kind of turn that on his head and look at the benefits when they're there. So I, for example, if they're in the mix, and like Jason said, you've got to learn to separate it out. You've got to learn to make them buy into the cover before you start thinking about value-added services, in my opinion. And then there's lots of variations on price depending on what occupation someone's got. But if they're in the mix, I'll then say, British Friendly, you've got 6 physiotherapy appointments and you've got 6 mental health appointments every single year free of charge. Now they're worth a fortune. Like if you can get proactive help and make sure that you don't need to make a claim. Because one of the things I've been interested in this week was that a lot of the top 10 occupations that buy cover, that there was very few manual workers on there. Now, I think manual workers are the people who need the cover. And for me, it's about their staying power. It's about a 30-year-old joiner being able to still not have a bad back when he's 50 because he's planning to work to 65 or 70, according to my paperwork. And how does he do that? He does that by having, help to stay fit and healthy. And all those value-added services can add to that, whether it's gym memberships, trainers, physiotherapy. You can complement that and make the income protection more about your lifestyle and less about the claim, I think.
I also think that it benefits the providers as well. If a client can access the mental health services, that may not then lead to an income protection claim, or again in the deferred period that they can access the physiotherapy. It can help them get back to work. Then we have rewards and benefits. Vitality. That reduces the chance of somebody needing to make a claim if they are leading an active lifestyle. So these benefits are also beneficial as well as to the end consumer, to the providers as well, to provide them.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that some of them say you might have an exclusion for your back, but then the physiotherapy services don't have the exclusion in. So you can still use the services for your back, even though your income protection doesn't cover your back. So I think it's about using that to complement what you're giving them in terms of the cover, as opposed to the reason for the cover. And I think that those two things have got to be separate.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, actually, which possibly even, dare I say, insurers might not have realised. But absolutely, where you get a mental health exclusion, a back exclusion, and then you still have access to all these other services for that thing. Yeah. And I presume that's
amazing. It's really powerful, isn't it? When we're saying musculoskeletal claims and mental health claims are the biggest claims on income protection, that you've got help with both of those things is incredible. Like that. It's,
even building on the back of that, even where, for example, the partner or the children aren't covered, but you can still use those services for your family. It is great. I mean, like I said, it really does complement the core cover. And as a feature, we should definitely be talking about it in the same way you would say, well, indexation is a feature of a policy. Well, added value services are a feature of this cover provider's policies, and we should be highlighting them and really, really pushing those.
And I think it's how you highlight them as well. We do. And I think we've talked about this earlier, post-sale, we remind them of the value-added benefits separate to the sale. So we remind them again so that they know what they've got after point. So it's about not losing it in all the noise of all the paperwork we're giving them as part of the cover. It's then reminding them again later and then reminding them again on reviews. Yeah. You've got to keep that message going forward so that they do use those things that are there for them.
Is there anything else, Zoe, practically in terms of that advice process that if you're a new advisor or an advisor who hasn't talked about them much before, you'd recommend in terms of how you bring them into the conversation?
So, contact your account managers, get they all have documents on the value-added benefits and how to set them up. Familiarise yourself with those, have them saved, and take your client through, getting set up basically so that they can use them.
Yeah. Right, I'm going to change tack slightly here or quite severely. But given I think this is one of the first industry events since the FCA's announcement, interested just to get a snapshot of how you think that might affect, I guess, protection in general, with the focus on pure protection and possibly income protection specifically. So Jiten, are you excited, nervous? All of this is on camera and will be used against you in years to come.
I'm going to say a bit of both. I was around as an IFA when the RDR rules came in, so I'm going to base a lot of what I'm about to say on what I saw the changes there, and it could be different, but I'm assuming there's going to be some overlap. They're obviously looking at 3 key areas, commission structures, products themselves, and then market competition. But I think some good stuff will come out of it. And if it basically means there's more focus on client outcomes, more focus on value for our income protection, that can be really good. And I think we're all part of this IPAW really on the grounds to really promote the importance and build upon that. I think some more governance is needed around things like advice processes, possibly, and don't shoot me on this, but minimum qualifications for protection advisors. I think some of the biggest changes that will also come out, and as much as the good things will be there could be some really bad things if they start playing around with commissions. This has been an ongoing debate for many years. Is it right to take everything up front? Will they put caps on percentage-based commission? So if you're doing a £500 protection premium versus £1,000, should you be earning double the amount of commission for the hours you put? And a lot of those things, I think, something will come. And I think it will be good for any advisor or firm of advisors to start thinking ahead about what's going to come out of this. Overall, I do hope that the outcomes are great for the end client and for us as a community, but I think I'm sitting on the fence at the moment, Andrew. I think there'll be some good, some bad, and we should be ready for that.
Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly expect loaded premiums to go, definitely. And I think that, for the commission, we come back to annual reviews. You can't sell a policy, be paid, and then not speak to the client again. You need to do those annual reviews. And then if we are looking at one of the things, fair value, thinking about income protection particularly, reviewable exclusions. I think, all providers should be, allowing this. When a client is at a point where that isn't a risk anymore, we should be able to review and remove those exclusions. And I'd like to see more come back up, more come into the exec IP market. We've lost 2, and I think, again, looking at competition, we need some more to come back into that market as well.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to miss you out because of time.
Fine.
And because I think there's enough for the industry to be getting on with those two. But yeah, the last question, which was one that we had during the first section from Joe, was just to kind of put you all on the spot and ask for one reason why you recommend IP, or the best thing, I suppose, about income protection that you would use. I'll just run along, starting with you.
So for me, it covers any illness. So there isn't a specified severity or a specified level of an illness or it being on a list. It's that if you are ill, then this is the product for you because it gives you income.
Thank you.
Multiple claims, even for, the same thing. Lots of people worry, particularly if they have cancer or something cardiovascular, will it happen again?
Yeah. Longevity. Yeah, I always say illness doesn't run to a timescale. So the fact that you could find, as you say, multiple claims, but the fact that you might end up finding you're going to claim all the way until age retirement. So the fact that longevity is there, to me, I love that part about the income protection.
That's brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming in today. In case it's not been apparent, this has been wholly live. They break the rain to get here and really appreciate it. It's been a really interesting discussion. And if it wasn't for the restaurant we've got booked in 20 minutes time to talk about stats and small print and all of those things that we inevitably will, we could go on for longer. But anyway. Before we get there, all week we've been showcasing some of our 7 Families content, and today is no different. So let's take a look at this film, which highlights how the 7 families in the project felt about the extra benefits that came with their payments.
Rehab is my job. Every session it puts in 100%, but you have to. There's no guarantees, it's just hard work till we get there.
The consultant sort of just fairly curtly said, "That's it, you're going blind." Not quite in those words, but and that was it. There was no support from
no follow-up.
And the 7 families has just been really sort of blowing us away.
The hope is once we get everything all sorted out, and especially with the support that 7 Families is giving us, both financially and through mentors, we hope to be able to become self-sufficient and actually get back to a proper working life again.
And in my role is to facilitate Tracy back into some paid work, and Tracy's goal is to do that with writing. We've had Tracy assessed by the RNIB. The hope is now that with time Tracy will have the skills to use a computer properly and to start writing some books, and we're also looking at how to use a mentor that's been assigned to her to improve her writing and help with publications.
Been getting support through like a health counsellor basically online, and also a physiotherapist, just talking me through some of the conditions or issues I may still have, and just generally chatting to see how I can take it forward and keep improving really. It's just given me that breathing space to reflect on my life, get physically fit, get mentally fit, and try and get back to work.
I see who's the CBT worker who works with me. He's been really helpful. You know, I've had 12 sessions with him, and it's really good. It's helped me with a hell of a lot of my problems with my trauma.
I think it has benefited Paul because he's developed techniques to kind of give more structure and routine to his life overall. I think it supported him with scheduling for his studying, and then also managing his time with voluntary placements as well. But I do think that he is now more work ready, so if he was to finish his studies and get a job, he'd be in a position now where he has got confidence and new tools to go ahead and do that.
I'm hopefully going to be going back to work on the 2 or 3 months' time. Certainly the finance side that Seven Families are going to offer us is making a big difference to me, because it means I don't have to rush back to work. It means I can take the time that I need to do my rehab and make sure I'm as best as I can possibly be.
That was one of our Seven Families films, which really effectively highlights the positive impact value-added services can have, and how income protection is about so much more than just the money.
Well, that just about brings us to the end of our content for the week. And once again, it's been a content-packed week with numerous topics discussed, 2 live social sessions on LinkedIn, and plenty of educational events run by our members, with more to come over the coming weeks.
And over the weeks to come, we'll be showcasing some of the highlights from this week. But before we share those, Vicky, what's your highlight been?
Gosh, there are so many, but I guess the highlight for me was watching the role play with Tracy Boyd and Stevie. I was actually laughing out loud, and I know many of our viewers were too. She definitely deserves to win an Oscar for that performance. It was brilliant. Andrew, how about you? What stood out for you?
The favourite child question. Well, on social, it's been great to see so many watch parties this year, even if it's also revealed just how unhealthy most insurers' lunches are. Of the content that we've produced, I love it when we try new things. And I certainly thought Rosalia's content on Wednesday, producing 100 pieces of social content in 10 minutes, was incredibly useful. Jo, how about you? What would you pick out?
So it gets harder to do this every year. So much of the content this year, I think, has been really good, really applicable for advisors. The role plays were really fun to write, even more fun to film. But in the interest of picking something different, I'm going to say our LinkedIn live sessions this year with Matt and Catherine, because I think it's been great to interact with our audience, connect with them and see what their questions are, and really be able to address those in live time.
I know this is my first IPAW, but I think I'm right in thinking it's at this point we should say some thank yous. Is that right?
That's right, Vicky. Now, this year we've had more people involved in IPAW than ever before, both the 27 on screen, but also our members who have been working with us to plan this for months. And let's say nothing of everyone behind the scenes at our members, planning extra events, social activity, and further educational activity. It really does take a village.
And it takes a lot more than that to make us look as slick and polished as we've hopefully come across. Blooper reel is to follow. And for that, we owe a massive thanks to our producer, Stevie Arnoldi from C Studios. We work with Stevie on a lot of our content. So if you've ever watched a Seven Advisors video, if you've watched the Seven Families anniversary film, or if you've listened to the podcast and been impressed, well, that's all down to Stevie. We almost don't want to share how good he is, but we definitely owe him a huge thank you.
But the key ingredient for a successful IPAW is the people watching. So our last thank you is to you, our wonderful audience, and to everyone who has been talking, posting, sharing, and joining in the IPAW conversation. You'll often hear us say, let's talk IP. And the reason for that is simple. In order to keep the momentum in the market and protect more customers, we need to keep income protection front and centre. and you can help us do that. Keep spreading the word. If you're an advisor, keep starting your conversations with income protection and keep sharing our messages. And if you don't already, follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram. And of course, feel free to visit our website for a host of useful education and insight materials, as well as links to all our members and affiliate sites. We'll be in touch shortly to ask for your feedback, which is invaluable to us as it helps shape the content we produce. So please do share your thoughts and ideas. We really do want to hear them. So until IPAW 2025, keep talking IP, and thanks for watching. We look forward to seeing you and doing it all again next year. I think it's now time for a pub lunch. Let's go.